All right, let's jump right into this explainer and tackle one of the biggest mysteries in modern medicine. Why on earth are we getting heavier despite endless dieting? I mean, for decades now, we've been told exactly what to do to lose weight, yet the problem literally only seems to be getting worse. Well, today we're going to crack the code on the hormonal theory of obesity, and I promise you by the end of this, you're going to look at your diet in an entirely new light. Let's kick things off with a pretty startling fact. Just looking at Canada as an example, between 1985 and 2011, the obesity rate didn't just inch up, it tripled. It went from just 6% to a whopping 18%. And here's the real kicker. This happened during the exact same time frame when doctors and health authorities were aggressively pushing low-fat, calorie-reduced diets. The whole world was basically told to count calories and fear fat, yet the obesity epidemic just accelerated. So clearly something in that traditional advice is totally broken. Think about it. The standard eat less, move more prescription has an almost 100% failure rate. The author of our source material makes a wild point here. Just through sheer inertia, the medical establishment has kept handing down this completely ineffective treatment from one generation of doctors to the next. It's actually compared to outdated medical practices, like using leeches for bloodletting or doing routine tonsillectomies for no good reason. Despite the glaring evidence of its absolute failure, caloric reduction is still vigorously defended by nutritional authorities. It's crazy.
Part 1. A cycle of nutritional confusion.
If you've ever wanted to pull your hair out looking at the hundreds of diet books out there, this is exactly why. The advice is just this endless, exhausting game of he said, she said. On one hand, you have highly respected doctors like Dr. Dean Ornish telling us, hey, dietary fat is bad, carbs are good. But then flip the script and you have Dr. Robert Atkins insisting, no, dietary fat is actually good and the carbs are the enemy. Add in the intense debates over eating 6 small meals versus 2 big ones, whether calories even count, or if milk is good or bad. It just leaves all of us desperately asking, who is actually right? The real issue here is that the science of nutrition has been completely missing a unifying theoretical framework. Without a solid foundation to understand how our bodies actually regulate weight, we just end up with these ridiculously simplistic one-factor theories. One group blames excess calories, another group blames carbs, someone else points the finger at meat or dietary fat, or, just a lack of exercise. Because these theories are so isolated, they completely fail to explain the true underlying biological cause of weight gain.
Which brings us to part 2. Treating symptoms instead of causes.
Because the medical world didn't have that solid framework, they kind of fell into a really terrible habit. Basically, they surrendered to treating the symptoms. Patient walks in with type 2 diabetes? Here, let me give you a pill. High blood pressure? Here's a pill. High cholesterol? Kidney disease? Pill, pill, pill. The medical field became entirely obsessed with finding and prescribing the next new drug for every single complication associated with obesity. Meanwhile, the actual treatment of obesity was outsourced to large corporations like Weight Watchers, or worse, charlatans peddling miracle cures, while doctors largely ignored the root nutritional cause. And this is where Dr. Jason Fung comes in. He's a nephrologist, a kidney specialist, and kidney disease is, of course, deeply connected to type 2 diabetes and obesity. Working with these patients day in and day out, he developed this nagging medical unease. He'd prescribe insulin to his diabetic patients, knowing full well that most of them would gain weight from it. His highly motivated patients would come back so frustrated, saying, Doc, you told me to lose weight, but the insulin you gave me is literally making me pack on the pounds. How is this helping? So here's the absolute million-dollar question. If weight gain was purely about eating too much and moving too little, why did a simple hormone medication, insulin, cause predictable, relentless weight gain, regardless of the patient's caloric intake? I mean, that paradox right there is the ultimate clue. It proves that the simplistic calories in, calories out model is fundamentally flawed. Part 3. Why obesity research fails. To really get to the bottom of this, we have to look at how we actually conduct research and why the evidence we've relied on has been so incredibly wrong. A massive barrier is our reliance on short-term studies. Look, obesity is a chronic condition. It takes decades to fully develop, yet the medical community frequently bases its advice on studies lasting just a few weeks. It's literally like trying to figure out how rust destroys a car by staring at the bumper for like 3 hours. You're just not going to see the real long-term picture. Short-term studies on long-term diseases are just practically useless. There's also this massive issue of over-relying on animal studies. The author uses this really funny but spot-on story called The Parable of the Cow. 2 cows read the latest nutritional research done on lions, which says eating meat is great for you. So the cows start eating meat and they quickly get sick and die.
A year later, 2 lions read research done on cows, which says eating grass is the key to health. The lions eat the grass, and they die. It perfectly highlights the absolute absurdity of reading a massive headline that says, low-fat diets reverse heart disease, only to dig into the footnotes and realize the study was done on exactly 5 rats. It all boils down to this really simple, crucial truth. We aren't mice. We're not rats. We aren't chimpanzees. We are human beings. To truly understand human obesity, we have to demand evidence-based medicine that relies on high-quality, peer-reviewed human studies. And even more importantly, we have to focus on what actually causes things, not just loose associations. Because as we know, just because 2 things happen at the same time doesn't mean one caused the other.
Part 4, the hormonal theory of obesity. Okay, so here is the actual solution, the big paradigm shift in how we view the human body. The hormonal theory of obesity states that obesity is not a caloric imbalance. It is a hormonal imbalance. And the main hormone acting as the master controller of your body weight, that's insulin. When your blood insulin levels stay chronically high and your body develops insulin resistance, your body is essentially receiving constant biological instructions to store fat. And it will do that no matter how much you restrict your calories. This theory is basically the comprehensive roadmap we've been missing. It finally explains everything the calorie model just couldn't. It explains the timeline of the epidemic. It exposes the calorie deception. It puts insulin resistance right at the center where it belongs. It even explains the social side of obesity, like why it's so heavily tied to poverty. Plus, it clarifies the differing roles of macronutrients like fat, protein, and carbs, while zeroing in on the real culprits like fructose and artificial sweeteners. And finally, Part 5, a new framework for health. So with this new framework in mind, how do we actually treat the root problem? Well, the solution definitely isn't about starving yourself. First up, you've got to reduce added sugars and refined grains, simply because those are the things that spike your insulin the most. You want to keep your protein consumption moderate, and importantly, add in healthy fats and fiber. But the most powerful tool in the shed? Intermittent fasting. It is an incredibly effective way to treat insulin resistance directly, without trashing your metabolism like a traditional calorie reduction diet does. Finally, improving your sleep and managing stress lowers cortisol, your stress hormone, which in turn helps keep that insulin in check.
We've basically spent 50 years following the wrong advice because we were asking the wrong questions. But now that we understand that high insulin is the real driver of weight gain, not just calories, the question is, are you ready to challenge the nutritional dogma you've been taught your entire life? Adopting this fresh framework isn't just a new diet. It represents genuine hope for a permanently healthier future. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and I highly encourage you to dive even deeper into the hormonal theory of obesity.